Welcome back to So You Really Want to Learn Latin, and today we're going to look at two new things. We're going to look at concessive clauses, and then we're going to look at something called the predicative dative. Okay, now we'll begin with concessive clauses. Now there's nothing very peculiar about this other than the normal little trick that where a subjunctive is used, there is always a reason. So we'll start with concessive clauses. Now, a concessive clause is introduced by a word such as although or even if. Okay? And if the concession, in other words, the statement that comes after the although or the even if the concession is a fact, then there's nothing really to learn. The Latin for although is quamquam, you've already met that, and the verb after quamquam is in the indicative. Okay, it is just, although it is raining, and you know it is, although it is raining, I am still quite happy. That would be a simple concessive clause where the concession is deemed to be a fact. So we've got an example in the book, quamquam festinas, hostes non capies. So, quamquam festinas, although you are hurrying, okay, that is a fact, although you are hurrying, hostes non capies, you will not capture the enemy. Okay, so that is a concessive clause that has a concession that is a fact. Now the other type of concession is where the concession is kind of put forward as a hypothesis, something for the sake of argument. Okay? Now in this type of clause, the Latin for although is quam vis, not quamquam, it's quam vis, and the verb goes in the subjunctive. Okay? So you might have something like milites fortes, quam vis pericula belli timeant, pro patria semper pugnant. Okay, so if we look at that carefully, milites fortes, quam vis pericula belli timeant. Okay, quam vis, although pericula belli, the dangers of war, timeant, they fear. But notice timeant is in the present subjunctive. Okay, so although they fear the dangers of war, but that is being put forward as a kind of hypothesis. It's a kind of supposed thing in the concession. It's not a fact. It's, you know, suppose they were to fear the dangers of war, that kind of thing. Then, what else have we got? We've got pro patria pugnant, they fight on behalf of their country. So, milites fortes, pro patria pugnant. Brave soldiers fight on behalf of their country, their fatherland. Quam vis pericula belli timeant, although they fear the dangers of war. In other words, you know, suppose they were to fear the dangers of war, brave soldiers fight on behalf of their fatherland. And therefore you kind of might translate the quam vis clause as however much they fear the dangers of war. Even if they were to fear the dangers of war, brave soldiers fight for their fatherland. Okay? So the two different types of concessive clause. One where it's just a fact, and in that, Latin for although is quamquam, and it's followed by an indicative. And the second type is where the concession is not a fact, it's something put forward as a hypothesis, something to consider. And there, the Latin for although is quam vis, and it's followed by the subjunctive. Okay, so you keep those two separate. And when you're translating Latin, you've got to be a little bit careful. As always, if the verb is in the subjunctive, it's in the subjunctive for a reason. And if you see it after the word quamvis, meaning although, you know that it's a concessive clause where the concession is not a fact, it is a hypothesis or a supposition. Now, the only other thing I'll say about these concessive clauses is that if you're trying to translate the phrase even if, the Latin for that will be etsi or etiamsi, and the verb will go in either the indicative or the subjunctive, and it will actually just follow the rules of conditional sentences because you've got that kind of if word. So remember how those conditional sentences work, simple conditions, where, you know, there's nothing either likely or unlikely about the condition. They have their verb in the indicative. Improbable conditions, which are the ones where, although it is possible that the thing will happen, it's unlikely. And then impossible conditions, where the condition simply cannot be fulfilled because it's already proved not to have been done. So something like, even if I had come yesterday, brackets, but I didn't, then I would still have been cross about, you know, missing my breakfast or whatever. So etsi and etiamsi, they both mean the same thing. They can introduce a clause where you're trying to do just that. Even if I had something, or even if I were to do something, or even if I am sitting here, okay? And those three types of situation, sort of simple fact kind of things, improbable but possible kind of were to do something in the future kind of things, and even if I had, or even if I were now, but I'm not. Okay, so those three types of conditional situation get introduced by these new words that we've just learnt, etsi or etiamsi. Okay, now, as always, best way to handle that little lot is to have a little go at it. So, in the book we have, should we do some easy stuff? Okay, we'll go Latin into English, just, you know, because we've got other things to get on with. Have a little look at this. So, for example, if you had quamquam pugnare volunt, nos superare non poterunt. Okay, now you've got quamquam. Quamquam means although, so this looks like it's going to be a simple concessive clause where the concession is a fact. Although they want to fight, quamquam pugnare volunt, although they want to fight, nos superare non poterunt, they will not be able to overcome us. Okay, poterunt, future tense of possum. Okay, now that you might want to contrast with the second one here, where we've got quam vis pugnare velint, nos superare non poterunt. Okay, finishes the same way, starts differently. So quam vis, we now know that means although, but it's followed by a subjunctive. So quam vis pugnare velint, although they want to fight, but it's in the subjunctive. So however much they want to fight, that would be a good way of translating that. However much they want to fight, they will not overcome us. Okay? Okay, so quam vis, you know, it means although, but it's almost never translated as although. It normally has this sort of meaning of however much this were the case, or even if this were to be the case. Okay, it's a concession that is put forward as a hypothesis, not as a fact. And we'll just do one more. So we've mastered all these little things. Etsi consulem de legises nunc eum timeres. Okay, etsi, even if consulem de legises, even if you had chosen the consul, okay, that's the pluperfect subjunctive, and In a conditional sentence, the pluperfect subjunctive is used for an impossible condition referring to the past. So, even if you had chosen the consul, nunc eum temeris, you would now fear him. Okay? That, by the way, is a mixed condition because you've got the first bit referring to the past and the second bit referring to the present. So, even if you had chosen the consul, you would now fear him. Okay? Right, so those are concessive clauses. There are some ones going from English into Latin, which is a really good way of testing that you've got the hang of it. So do have a go at those, and if you need the answers are in the answer book. But we're now going to have a little look at something really peculiar called the predicative dative. Now, the predicative dative is one of these things that I remember it used to be on the syllabus for Common Entrance Latin. I think it probably still is on the syllabus for Common Entrance Latin, you know, which is an exam taken by sort of 12 or 13-year-olds. It's really, really weird that it should be considered such a key aspect of the language, and yet you very rarely see it. And it's quite hard to explain. But anyway, we'll have a crack at it. So, the predicative dative is used with abstract nouns, just, you know, some abstract nouns, not all of them, but just some of them, after the verb to be. And it's where the verb to be, which as you know is normally followed by a complement in the nominative case, like, you know, she is the Queen of England, for example. In that sentence, the Queen is the complement of the verb to be, and it's in the nominative. She is the Queen. With this predicative dative, you often get, well, not often, but you do get a complement in the dative case after the verb to be. And that complement will be one of these abstract nouns. Okay? Now, again, in the book, there's a list of them. But, for example, auxilium. Now, auxilium means help. If you wanted to say something like, he was a help, you know, around the house kind of thing, you wouldn't say auxilium est. You would say auxilio est. So the word auxilium would be put into the dative case after the verb to be, and that whole phrase means to be a help. He was a help. Okay? Yeah, I mean, that's not a very common kind of concept, really. But anyway, that's a good example of the predicative dative. The word cura. Now, cura means a care, as in, you know, oh, I have so many cares. But again, after the verb to be, you might have curae est. It is a care. You know, it's something to be concerned about. Curae in the dative as the complement of the verb to be. Curae est. It is a care. It's almost as if it means it is for a care. That's kind of what the predicative dative is. As I say, it's peculiar. I can't promise that it's the most important aspect of this language, but, you know, we've got to be thorough, we've got to cover it all, and that's something to look out for. Okay, so again, if we just have a little look at a sentence where this is used, you might, for example, come across a sentence such as, Quamvis pugnare nolit, Hannibal curae Romanis est. Okay, now, if you look at that, there's quite a lot going on. Quamvis, well, that's going to be followed by the subjunctive. Quamvis pugnare nolit. However much he does not want to fight, okay, nolo, I do not want, or I am unwilling, and the present subjunctive of that, no lim, no lis, no lit. So, quamvis pugnare nolit. However much he does not want to fight, Hannibal, curae Romanis est, Hannibal is, and then curae, it's in the dative case. Hannibal is a concern for the Romans. Okay, he is a cause of concern. Okay, or we might have number 3 in this exercise I'm looking at. Etsi Romam non oppugna viset, cives Romani auxilio ei non fuissent. So, even if they had not attacked Rome, cives Romani auxilio ei non fuissent, the Roman citizens would not have been auxilio. Now that's the word auxilium put into the dative case. The Roman citizens would not have been a help, ei, to him. So, etsi Romam non oppugna viset, even if he had not attacked Rome, okay, even if he had not attacked Rome, cives Romani, the Roman citizens, non fuissent, would not have been auxilio, a help. It's in the dative case, it's a predicative dative, ei, for him. Now there's a buzzing on my watch, I'm sorry about that, that's just telling me my bread's ready. Okay, but I'll fix that in a minute. Okay, so that pretty much is that with the predicative dative. Okay, you know, it's just another thing you've got to always, when you're translating Latin, if you see a word in either a case and you don't understand the case, a tense and you're not quite sure about the tense, or, very importantly, a mood, i.e. indicative or subjunctive, you've always got to scrabble away and work out, why was it in the subjunctive? Why was it in the dative? And if you go back through these lessons, or if you go back through the book, you will almost always find the answer. Okay, right, enough about that. Next time we will move on and have a little look at verbs of fearing. But until then, keep up the good work on the Latin. Drop me a comment in the comments box below if you're having any kind of issues with this stuff. And I'll see you back here on this channel very soon.